This is Just Ask Julia, where we share tips, tricks, and trends to help you elevate your career success. I am Liz Helton, and today I will be talking about the evolution of your resume from college graduate to executive. Now, if you are watching our session live today, we will have a Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. So feel free to ask any questions about resumes, LinkedIn profiles, interviews, anything career development related, and we are happy to help. If you are watching our recording, feel free to click the link in the comment in the description below, and you will be able to sign up for a future Just Ask Julia session where you can ask your questions live as well. All right, so let's get started. This is one of my absolute favorite topics because so often I will see resumes that come to us that look like they were made circa 1999. The training individuals get on resumes hasn't really changed a lot over the years. I will see new grads all the way up to C-suite executives that have resumes that have very similar things happening with them. And it's important to know that as you go through your career, the way you tell your story needs to evolve with you. So today we're going to talk about some important factors to keep in mind as you are updating your resume to appeal to different audiences. Things that are not going to change throughout your career no matter what. The intention of your resume is to, of course, introduce yourself. Oftentimes, your resume is going to be a first impression, right? I often will tell people that the resume won't get you the job, but it might get you in the door. Right. And that is always going to be the case in one form or another. Whether you have had conversations previously with individuals or you're applying cold, your resume is kind of an impression that somewhere along the line, somebody's trying to get to know you a little bit. It is a chance to provide a career snapshot. A lot of people will think of your resume as something that is, encompassing your entire career. It needs to have every single detail, but resume is actually to summarize. Right? Versus CV or curriculum vitae, which is Latin for course of life, which is actually meant to be more of the nuts and bolts of your entire career. When we're talking your resume, we're really talking more about a marketing tool that's meant to demonstrate your communication skills and differentiate you from the competition. Most importantly, with your resume, no matter where you are in your career, your resume really needs to align with the job description for the role you're targeting. Something that if you have ever heard me talk about resumes before, you will probably have heard me say this, and you will probably hear me say it again in the future. Your resume isn't about you. It's about how you are a fit for the role. And so once you figure that out, you can start rethinking about the type of things that you're covering in your resume. All right, so what goes into a resume? In some form or another, you will always have that letterhead at the top that has your name, your contact information, a title or a description of who you are as a professional. You'll have a summary, not to be confused with an objective statement. If your resume starts with something along the lines of seeking opportunity, you need to get rid of that right away because that is inherently self-serving. And as I've just said, we're trying to think about the role at hand. So what we do now is we focus on not what you're looking for, but why the interviewer or the hiring manager should be looking at you, right? So we think about a summary of the qualifications that make you a great fit for the role. This is also going to include some core expertise, often shown in the form of bullets. You'll often see kind of 6 to 9, maybe 12 bullets that focus on core responsibilities, if you will, that you can find in the job description. Of course, we've got your experience, and we're going to be thinking really specifically in here about your impact, not the description of the roles that you've had in the past. We want to shift around from focusing on not just what you've done, but really how well you've done it. Your education, and then some additional experience in extra fields. And we'll look at some of what those can be as we go through today's presentation, because that's going to change throughout your career. We don't read resumes the way we do most other documents. Nobody is sitting around and scanning your resume from top to bottom, spending hours poring over every sentence, which isn't exactly a great sales pitch from a resume writer. But let me tell you, you need to know that somebody is going to spend approximately 6 seconds before they decide what they're going to do with your resume. And you don't know where they're looking in those 6 seconds. So you need to maximize that short amount of time with a few key areas. Strategic formatting and being able to control where the eye moves down the page is going to help a lot. A standout letterhead that's going to keep your name and the type of work you're targeting really visible. Your accomplishments. Like I said, we want to focus on impact. The core expertise or competencies that can kind of act as like an SEO boost and be a really standout way for somebody to check off boxes quickly. Brief descriptions that can show, okay, here's what the role is all about, and then backing it up with those big impacts. And then really separating it out with clear, concise bullets. If you have big blocks of text throughout your entire resume that are exceeding 3, 4, 5 lines at a time, it's going to make it really hard for somebody to digest. So no matter where you are in your career, we want to make sure that you are really summarizing those impacts with concise bullets. Try to limit those between 2 to 3 lines as possible per bullet. If you need more than that, break it out into maybe sub bullets, or trying to see if you need the entire thing that you're saying, of what you're trying to say, see how you can shorten that up a little bit. The way we formulate your resume and the way we structure a resume is kind of an inverted pyramid. Now, the pieces of what goes into your resume is going to be the first thing that is going to change as you move through your career. So now you know what the different parts are. Let's talk about how they're going to move as you excel through your career. Now, early in your career, the need to know items are going to be, of course, that letterhead. That's likely never going to change. The summary and your core skills. Now, where it starts to change is when we get into kind of the meat and potatoes in the middle section. Early in your career, the most important, the most impactful thing that you have done in your career is your education. You spent 4+ years earning a degree or, building a certain set of expertise. That is going to come right before your professional experience in most cases, because that's the thing that they need to know first and foremost. It's probably the most relevant thing that you have done to date. Then you can move into that professional experience. And keep in mind, early in your career, professional experience can be coursework. It can be internships. It can be community service that you did in your fraternity or sorority. Think about the experiences that are going to help you tell the story in alignment with the job description. More often than not, when I'm talking to early career professionals, the work they did in the classroom or through service organizations is more relevant to the jobs they're applying to than, say, that pizza delivery job. So you really want to think about what is the most important thing. You want that to go at the top of that inverted pyramid, and then kind of work your way down to the nice to know, which is your additional involvement, which that pizza delivery job is still relevant because it can show your dedication, your commitment to keeping a job. There's a lot of great things that can go into that. Personal accomplishments, of course, things like awards or recognition, still valid. All can be included. Early in your career, 0 to 5 years, hard and fast rule, 1 page max. If you are exceeding into 2 pages early in your career, you need to figure out how to tighten your story up to make sure that you're focusing on the most important bullets. As you excel through your career, some things are going to move around. First and foremost, the work that you have done is going to be more relevant than your education. So the first thing you're going to notice here is that education drops to the bottom. What's nice when most resume readers are looking at resumes is that they're either looking for it right at the top or right at the bottom. Anywhere else in that education is just going to kind of get lost. So kind of consider that education later in your career to just be a nice footnote that is going to check a box for somebody. You'll also see that up here we've extended in the need to know area. The summary is going to likely fill out a little bit more. You're going to have more to say as you grow through your career. You're going to know more about who you are as a professional and what makes you unique, right? Early in your career, you might be really struggling to figure out, well, what's my special sauce? I haven't really had time to figure out what my special sauce is that early on. Whereas later, what makes you different and what you've excelled at and what your biggest strengths are. So that summary section is going to expand out a little bit. Your core expertise is going to really change and evolve to focus on not just the job the day-to-day of the job, but your leadership as well, and kind of reaching across the aisle. You may also start including something like career highlights in your summary section, which I'll show you some examples of that later on in today's presentation. Your professional and relevant experience is still going to sit right there in that center, that, like I said, the meat and potatoes of your resume. And your additional involvement may be a little bit more impactful than some of the earlier work you've done. So now we might be talking about board work and, spearheading major volunteer initiatives, or, working on ERG groups within, ERG groups is redundant, excuse me, employee resource groups within your organization. Personal accomplishments, awards, thought leadership as you go through your career. Maybe you've been a speaker and have done a lot of that thought leadership, talking not just about the work your company does, but as an industry as a whole. And then, of course, like I mentioned, your education. Now, as you go through your career, after you hit the 5-year mark is where I will entertain the idea of moving into a 2-page resume. My typical rule is that if you can do it in a page and a half, you can probably still do it in 1 page. If you need more than a page and a half, we're going to stick to 2 pages. A 3-page resume is incredibly rare, and it's going to be for more technical industries. So think the sciences, where you've got patents and a lot more kind of thought leadership and accomplishments to focus on. I usually consider that 3rd page an addendum page. And oftentimes I'll even call it just as such, where if you have got a lot more to say about the work you do outside of your professional experience, we can include that, but it's more in a nice to know, something supplementary to kind of back up everything else that we're saying in your resume. So we've talked a little bit about the structure of your resume, but now we're going to talk about how you are showcasing your accomplishments, because that's also going to change as you go through your career. Early in your career, a lot of the work is, how do I hear it? Oftentimes I hear it as grunt work. I hear this as a coach that works with early career professionals. I often hear, gosh, Liz, I just don't want to be shuffling papers. Well, a lot of times that paper shuffling is some of the most important work you're going to do in those roles, because it is priming your teams that you're supporting to be able to take that information and build strategy and make major impact, right? So showcasing how you have supported teams is going to be very important, coordinating logistics, and then most importantly, understanding that bigger picture. If you can go in and in the bullets of your resume showcase that, yeah, you coordinated logistics, but then you know what that led to, and you can showcase what that led to, that's going to make a huge impact to the hiring manager and saying, oh, this person gets why that is an important task. As you grow into more of an experienced professional, you're really going to want to focus more on how you have built strategy. As we talked about with that summary, you're going to want to showcase that you know who you are as a professional, and really demonstrating measurable success and thorough expertise, right? We want to really dig in and showcase that you see the value you have brought to a company. You're going to want to really focus more on some of the more technical aspects of the job. You're going to want to showcase how you have moved the needle and have made major impact. Earlier in your career, some of those impacts, especially when you're in school, it's going to feel more descriptive, and it's okay to feel like you have a heavier weight in some forms of description. As you go through your career, it's going to become clear what that impact really looks like, right? Anywhere you can, you want to be able to showcase your accomplishments in a accomplished X as measured by Y by doing Z. Let me repeat that again. Accomplished X as measured by Y by doing Z. That's really going to help you formulate that experience into an impact form. Now, as you get further into management and executive level roles, it's not going to just be about the day-to-day of your job. It's also going to become more about how are you building and shaping the organization, right? How are you leaning into the mission and vision of the company that you're working with, right? How are you reaching across functions and helping different teams, as we say, play in the sandbox well together. You want to showcase long-term success and showing that you understand not just the mission of your team, but the organization as a whole. Now, of course, these are just 3 very simple bullets for each of the levels of your career. But this is a great place to start. If you're thinking about it, what is the person that you're going to be reporting to really going to need from you at each stage of your career, right? What's going to be important to them in showcasing that you are the right person to fill the spot and help them fulfill their mission as well? All right. So let's talk about some features to consider, including to kind of back up your expertise. This kind of plays into that inverted pyramid that we've talked about. And this is where I'm actually going to show you some resume examples for each level of your career to help you kind of visualize how this can evolve through as you go. So early in our career, I had mentioned that experience can be pretty broad, right? So often we hear individuals come to us and say, Liz, I didn't do a lot in college. I went to class. I studied. Right now, especially, I'm working with a lot of professionals who the majority of them spent the overwhelming portion of their college experience behind a computer screen because of COVID. And so a lot of individuals right now are struggling with, how do I create a resume when everything I did was on Zoom? Student involvement and internships are fantastic, but don't discount coursework and projects, maybe leadership projects, like I said, within fraternities or sororities. So we're going to take a look at an early career professional. So this is a public relations professional who graduated in 2023. She has a host of different internships. You'll see that in the most relevant portion of her resume right here. She had some pretty strong internships. We also don't want to discount the work that she did within her sorority, and then some clerical work as well. So you see how we've kind of broken out the experience so it's not fully in reverse chronological order, but by the most relevant, and then backing it up with some nice to know additional involvement. Even though this individual is just graduating, she's got her degree. We are now considering her a professional, right? That's one of the first things that individuals will say to me is, Liz, but I don't have a job in this yet. Am I really a professional? Yep, you sure are. You absolutely are. This is how we're positioning you now. We're no longer thinking student. We're thinking about you in the workforce as a working professional. Here's that summary. You can see it's still pretty consolidated, right? And then we, of course, have 9 bullets that are very specific to a job description. You don't see things in here that are around, great communicator or collaborative. Those are personality traits that we want to prove through demonstrating the success that this individual has brought to the table. So this is a technical recruiter resume, and you can see their professional highlights. We've done this in a few different ways. We've kind of incorporated more of the bullets around their core expertise and then built that out further to showcase, all right, this is the type of role that this individual filled. They have a little bit more of a specific summary, right? And then as we get into their professional experience, they've been in roles that have maybe extended out a little bit longer, and we wanted to be able to break down those accomplishments in a more digestible way. So we'll even have some bullets here and then sub-bullet them out. Remember how I said we want to keep those bullets nice and short? Sub-bulleting is a great way to be able to break down that information and categorize things a little bit. And then you see we move into a second page. We've got those technical competencies. The early work starts to get a little bit more summarized. Okay. So that is somebody that is a little bit more experienced in their career. You can see they've started to build out a little bit more information, mostly because they have the expertise to know what to say about the role. And that is totally okay for early career professionals to say, I'm going to speak to the expertise that I have, right? All right, so this is a head of product role. And you'll see this summary is a lot more extensive than the other ones that we've included. You'll see here that instead of including those 6 to 9 bullets, we've included what we call an executive theme section that talks about what are this individual's 4 key areas that they are most known for. what I'll explain to individuals is that this section, your summary, talks about what you do. An executive theme section talks about how you do it. And a career highlights section is going to back up all of the claims that were just made right up here. Okay. Now, this individual, we've kept their roles nice and tight. And then that left us space to include their patents, publications, licenses, education. You'll see they have, a lot more extensive degree. So we, need a little bit more space for that in the bottom, but we were still able to keep all of this to 2 pages. Right. This is actually one of my favorite. You'll see I have it bookmarked right at the top, is a list of great action verbs to make your resume stand out. This is a great article from Indeed. And if you haven't checked out Indeed's blogs, Indeed has a great career development blog section that I really enjoy perusing when I'm looking for inspiration. And they actually will break down action verbs by the type of accomplishment. So if you're trying to showcase accomplishment, they have a whole list here of different words you can be using to up-level the language in your resume. They've also got verbs in here for explaining responsibilities. It's of course different than impact. Communication styles, communication skills, showcasing creative experience, right? Building something. How you contributed to something is really important. Early in your career, you might have coordinated. Later in your career, you might have supported or developed. But later, at the executive level, you've probably, ideated and actually come up with the strategy. And being able to articulate the difference between the layers of development is going to be really important in showcasing your level of expertise. All right, so that is it for me today for this session of Just Ask Julia. Again, if you're watching live, we are going to start the Q&A session momentarily. For those of you watching the replay, thank you for tuning in. You can click the link in the description to sign up for a future Just Ask Julia session. I am Liz Helton, our resident resume writer and early career coach, and thank you for joining us today.